podcast joint with C. Eric.
What is the deal? This is T Money, and you are now watching the T Money podcast joint featuring Sierra Ross. Sierra's not here today, but today we have the illustrious Kiana, the Purple Goddess, from VPR Radio. Kiana, what's up, baby? How you doing?
I'm great. Ooh,
It's really great. It's really great to have you here. But let me tell you guys a story. I wanna put it out there to the world so the world can know. All right? Excuse me, maybe a little too much rose up. But real quick, I want to salute you, Kiana, and I want to salute my man DJ FMI, who is also part of your show, the VPR Radio show, which you can catch online, Facebook, and everywhere else you can catch it. Yep. I, being from Your MTV Raps, hosting shows and hosting television for many years, after my years there, I never, ever thought to host a podcast show. Didn't even want any part of it, right? So these people, when I say these people, I'm talking about Kiana and DJ FMI, were so gracious to interview me. You know, although I had so many people that were interested at the time, I felt their energy. So I took it upon myself to actually choose to be interviewed by them. And it led to a great relationship. I've been interviewed by them several times, and I'm not too sure how many record-breaking times.
Broke the record,
right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So with that, after that, I went on a huge run of shows. You know, I got interviewed by several different podcasts, and
Everybody, but we did it first.
Yeah, no question. And I realized at that time that I was interested. I figured that I could do my own show. And I attribute my success today to a degree to being part of what you guys offered me, and I truly appreciate that. And I thank you so much for being here today.
That, I'm just like, I'm sure I'm turning red.
I'm just telling the world now. I told you already. But yeah, I appreciate that, man, because you never know how things pan out. You know what I mean? So salute to Kiana, salute to DJ FMI. Definitely check out VPR Radio. You can check them out, go online and find them. Yep. They do a great job, man. They've been doing it longer than me, you know what I mean, on a podcast tip. So, salute to them, man. Thank you so much, Kiana. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
But today we got my man here. This book right here, look at Rare and Unseen Moments in 90s Hip Hop.
And they are.
Right? T. Eric Monroe, the collector's edition. This book is crazy. Mm-hmm. He finally came out with his own book, man. It's my man T. Eric Monroe in the building. What's up, son? What's happening?
Thank you.
Where's the dilly? What's the dilly?
It's been a minute, man.
I should say, you remember that term? What's a dilly, yo? What's a dilly, yo?
Man. It's been a minute, son.
Last
time I saw you, it was up in was Astoria.
It wasn't no P. Diddy party. It was no P. Diddy party. Don't say P. Diddy.
No, you were working on a project, and it was me, you, and Cole Rodriguez. I think it was
right.
It was the old.
I can't remember what it was.
It was a Cosby. Whoever produced the Cosby Show,
right?
The Carson something studios, whatever, up in somewhere Queens or whatever.
Yeah.
Carson Weber.
Yes,
yeah. And we were gonna put something together.
Yeah.
It didn't manifest, but it was all good.
But everything happens when it's supposed to happen.
But you're here now, brothers. You're here. How you doing, man? How's everything?
Good. Life was good.
Just so you know, T. Eric Monroe is he's an author, obviously because he has a new book out, right? He's a visual historian, and welcome to the program, man. Good seeing you.
It's an honor to be here, man. I'm glad to be able to share it.
Let's talk to me, man. Kiana's here. I think we were sharing thoughts earlier
of the
so
suburbs.
many thoughts,
of the suburbs
because
because you're originally from New Jersey, correct?
Yes, I'm Central New Jersey. I've been there since a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
I never lived in the city. Never cared to live in the city. I like the suburbs.
Say that again. I'm sorry. I want to hear. You never cared to live in the city.
I love the suburbs.
Okay.
Never wanted to live in the city.
Right, okay.
Even during all my years of photography, I enjoyed coming to the city, absorbing all the craziness and the networking ability of being in the city, but then going back and just leaving it behind me and enjoying, as I called it, regular life. You know what I mean? Where I couldn't imagine living and growing up in the city. So it gave me a vantage point of appreciation, the energy, the networking, the chaos, the beauty, the creativity. Like, there was so much in New York to absorb, but then I could also just get on a bus or a train and go back and just carry it with me.
So listen, so you guys who are watching this show, I just want to be clear on what's going on here. We were having a conversation before we went on air in regards to the dichotomy of Long Island, suburban life, and city
Project,
life.
city life,
No,
right.
city life. Let me keep it 100. So, and I was detailing a story as it relates to my upbringing. I mean, obviously, I'm from Long Island, Strong Island, where you at, holla if you hear me. And I loved my upbringing. I had a great life, and I think, and it's sad to a degree because we're all, listen to me, we all black, right? We all black.
Yep.
We all people of color. We all together, man. We shouldn't have this difference.
But we do.
But we do.
Right.
So I'm gonna try to make this as clear as possible. I'm gonna try to eradicate 80 to 100 years of difference in 5 seconds.
Wow.
Here we go.
Right? Suburban life is not, for people of color, is not necessarily what you think it is, okay? We have grass. Yes, we have maybe more oxygen, right? We might have a pet dog in a house, right? But it's not necessarily not ghetto as you think.
It's not
ghetto.
that same privileged experience
Right.
that we imagine.
As you depict it, you think
Right.
you think is that privileged, and now you're doing well, and you're spoiled, and you don't have
depends
to
where you
do
are in the
extra.
suburbs, though.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but see, but
Yeah.
That's what we were
I
saying.
grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up 10 minutes from Queens Village, man. My lifestyle was what it was. I mean, my neighborhood was 80, 90% black, 5% Caucasian, maybe, and the rest was Hispanic or other races, right? So, and I faced the same challenges
Right.
as people do in Compton, as people do in different parts of the country. And I learned that as I got older. But with that being said, I want to say that New York City, and I'm talking the 5 boroughs, is unlike any other places in the entire world.
That's right.
And I can say definitively that I love my city. Yes, I said I love my city because I lived there for several years and I've claimed it. So
Yeah, okay, we'll give you that.
No question. You know what I mean? So I got my ghetto pass. My ghetto pass is in my pocket, and that's what it is. So
You got invited to the barbecue.
Thank you very much. That's right. We know you from Long Island, but you're the special kid.
But you can still come to the barbecue.
He can still
too.
come.
You got it. You
Right,
got
for
it.
us.
In the suburbs, we have cookouts.
That's right.
Where I'm at, it's mixed.
So E, man, listen to
Yes.
me. Okay, we're here to talk about your book, right?
Right.
And at first, we're here to talk about the fact that you took so many pictures that you had enough photos to even put together a book. So how did I know hip hop inspired you? It's apparent because in your book you have so many great moments of the culture in your book. I mean, and if you get a chance, I want you, before we get into that, I'll talk to you about where to get his book. But his book is amazing because his images are off the hook.
They are.
Right? But talk to me a little about your beginnings. Talk to me a little about what inspired you, because I know it had to be about the culture that inspired you. And did you have any other skill sets besides? I mean, did you know you wanted to be a photographer? Is my point. Like, is this what you gravitated to first, or was it like I tried to be a rapper?
No.
I picked up a camera, or I tried to be a DJ, but that wasn't working.
I didn't play myself. I mean, growing up as a kid, we always had cameras around the house. So by default, at family holidays or whatever, I would take family pictures, or I would take pictures of people visiting or whatever. So that was just as a kid. And then
Were you like the appointed photographer?
Unofficially.
Okay.
Like it just by default, like we went on fishing trips, I happened to take pictures. But one thing I noticed looking back, when you look at, let's say, family albums, there's no subtitles on the family albums. Like, you look at a family album, you know what you're looking at. You know what I mean? Like, you're given a story as you look. And I think something about doing that just helped my eye to train to tell a story in one moment, and I didn't realize this until many years later. But yeah, as a kid, just taking pictures, I had fun taking pictures. And then as I got into skateboarding, I would take my camera to skateboarding events, capture the moments of just happening, not necessarily the fancy action shots, but just to be able to tell a story in a picture or two to my other friends, like what was going on. So skateboarding got me into photography more seriously. And then at a certain point, I used to come to contests here in the city at the Brooklyn Banks. And the first picture that I got published was the first woman who had ever skated at the Brooklyn Banks, which is like the famous skate spot that ran in Thrasher magazine. And that was when I was a junior in high school.
Oh, that's huge.
So getting my first images in Thrasher magazine in high school, and then just continue to take pictures, not for a specific purpose or career, just because it was fun and I enjoyed doing it. By 1992, there was a big event in Jersey called the MTV Beach Bash, and I was there because it had a skateboarding event and a hip hop or a concert with Crisscross. So while I was there, I got a photo pass. I ended up photographing Crisscross and DOS Effects as they were performing. And then someone literally asked me, "What are you doing with your pictures?" And I didn't have a real answer. I'm like, I just take pictures to take pictures. And the guy was like, "Well, why don't you try and sell them?" And that was like the $1 million question that opened Pandora's box. And as a result of that, I ended up getting involved with a photo stock agency. And they said to me, well, we could really help you to really get your images out and help us to really push your stuff is if you can get a magazine behind you. I'm like, magazine? I said, the only magazine I know is Thrasher. But I'm like, oh, Thrasher has a music section. So I reached out to Thrasher magazine, and they were like, yeah, well, anything you want to do, take a picture of it, write an article, go against it, and we'll start publishing it. So that helped me get my foot in the door with the music industry. And then within that first year of being involved and being around, I started networking with other photographers, meeting people like Ernie Panicoli, meeting Chimo Dude specifically. That was very pivotal to me because it allowed me to get my foot in the door with the Source magazine, first getting pictures in the party section or the coast to coast section, and then just networking with other photographers. So my passion is what led me to just kept finding out what more can I explore in New York, what else is there to explore. So that's what really started me getting in my foot in the door and getting involved in and around the hip hop industry. Just
that's dope, man. That's dope. So dope. Let me tell you something, because a lot of people, and you said you figured this out early in life.
Yes.
A lot of people don't even know what they're gonna do, until they they become an adult. They waste many years saying, oh, I'm going to I might want to do this, and I don't know what I want to do. I'm gonna hang out with my friends in the week. I'm gonna drink.
Right.
I'm gonna chill with them. No big deal. But you had a focus.
Yes.
Which
and I didn't realize
amazing.
I was leading myself into a profession. More than anything, I felt myself just moving in a direction where I didn't know what the possibilities were. I didn't know. I got no's, but no didn't mean no to me.
Right.
I remember I would try and show my portfolio within my first year and a half of just whatever I had. Photo editors or whatever would say no. I'm like, okay, fine. But I would still find my way to, if I found out about a music video going on, showing up at a music video set, going to a party, going here, going there, and then also having Thrasher behind me. Every month I programmed myself such that I would reach out to publicists to do articles, of different musicians. So, whether it was Nas, Onyx, MC Solar, all these people.
That's how you get. This is what I was going to ask you. Yeah. Thrasher helps you gain access to some of the people that you were taking photos of.
Yes.
Because even looking at and viewing your book, and viewing some of the pictures that you have in here,
imagery is
crazy. And some of these pictures you can't just stand in the audience and take.
Nah.
You have to be
right
there.
Be in the moment.
You understand? So my first question to you is, how did you gain access to take some of these photos?
Initially, the way that it started was, I'd reach out to publicists to see if I can line up an interview and a shoot with, let's say, for example, Nas.
Right.
And then what happens is you get to meet the different publicists at the record labels, and then within their roster, they'll have other artists. They'll be like, hey, well, this person has an album coming out, or would you be interested in interviewing or photographing this person? And then you go to the next label and you start creating these relationships. So within creating these relationships, you get more access to more people, even if it's not a straight up shoot for the article to go into Thrasher, or they would just reach out to you once they found out I also had a photo stock agency behind me, because they knew if I went to an industry party and I got this artist with this artist, that I can not only give it to let's say the Source magazine or to the Vibe magazine, I could also give it to my photo stock agency, and then what they would do is try and run it to Us Weekly, People magazine, this magazine, that magazine.
That's dope. That's
so it
really
helped
dope.
This is before all the cell phones, right?
Correct,
Everybody wasn't snapping these pictures at parties.
So you had to figure out a way of creating your own distribution system, and having a photo stock agency behind me allowed me to have a distribution system early on.
I love that. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
When did you first identify that this was actually your talent and say, okay, let me run with this?
I don't know if there was a defining. I don't know that there was a defining moment. If anything, I could say what moment sort of in that direction. When I got to photograph legendary Gregory Hines, the singer, Broadway performer,
Tap dancer, yeah.
And it was a
Yes.
very interesting moment because it was in 1992. I was going to a what do they call those back then? Not a talent show,
Open mic?
not an open mic. There was something, a showcase.
Showcase.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was a really interesting showcase. So it was Onyx. I forgot who else was performing. Onyx, Michelle Indigo-Cello was playing bass or whatever. It was a bunch of people. So I remember pulling up in front of this venue, and it was somewhere within the Broadway theater area. And I'm sitting in my car. I got there an hour early, and across the street was the Virginia Theater, and Gregory Hines was doing Jelly's Last Jam. So I'm sitting in my car waiting, and then I noticed the stage door opens, and then like Savion Glover comes out, and people are like, oh, they're signing autographs. And then I remember the next door opened, and it was Gregory Hines, and I got this nudge. I was like, I got to go take his picture. So I remember I got my camera out, and I got in the middle of the chaos, whatever, and I'm waiting, took him a couple pictures. And as soon as he got within speaking distance, like I got this quick idea. I said, Mr. Hines, do you mind if I take your picture? I'm trying to put a portfolio together, of black artists, da-da-da. And he's like, yeah, sure. And then he's like, stop. I'm like, oh shit, what did I do? But I had to keep face. I didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Right.
So he's just like, you guys, like his audience from Broadway, he's like, you guys wait here. He's like, and I'm like, look at him. He's like, yo, come with me. And I'm like, so I'm like, what? He's like, you want to take a picture? I'm like, yeah. So we literally walk, quarter way down the block, and he's just like, go. And I was just like, boom, 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 boom.
Right. Snap away.
I got my 12 shots,
No
you know
question.
what I mean? And then, as we're walking back, he's like, do you have a card? I was like, yeah, for whatever reason, I already had a card. Like, I was
right.
always
Yeah,
business
you
savvy
gotta,
ahead of
yeah.
time.
Right.
So we walk past, again, his crowd from Broadway theater people, go to the stage manager and introduce me, whatever the guy's name. This is Eric. He's going to come back in a couple days, whatever, with the pictures. I want to see, da-da-da. Wow. So I said, thank you, Mr. Hines. And then from there, he went back to his crowd, signing autographs or whatever. So the next day, or couple, hour later, I went and shot some of Onyx and whoever was doing the showcase. And I remember that following Monday or Tuesday, I came back to the photo stock agency with the stuff I had shot of Onyx. The day before, I had shot Arrested Development, and then I had the stuff of Gregory Hines.
Right.
And I remember the photo stock agency people asking me, like, how the hell did you get shots of Gregory Hines? Like, we understood, like, a little hip-hop shit. How did you get this? And I explained it. And they just shook their heads like, okay. And they explained it. They gave me sort of like a overall dose of like this bigger world to sort of observe or whatever. I'm like, and sort of at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm on the path to something. I didn't know what that path was.
Right. The trajectory.
Yeah. And then the other side of it was like, when I leave from New York and go back to the suburbs or go back to where I'm hanging out, like, you can't really describe what it is, so you sort of just keep your mouth shut and be like, okay, and just enjoy like this this very polar opposite worlds that I'm living in. You know what I mean? Because my parents, my father worked for the federal government and retired. My mother was a teacher and retired. Wow. So they had a very normal, structured life.
Right.
Whereas this world that I was going into now made no sense to anyone.
The skater, photographer.
Right. Like none of the shit makes sense. Like what the fuck are you doing, kind of thing. But that was sort of the time that sort of opened up. Like there's something here to really follow this passion into. But I also didn't really have anyone on my side to say, you should do this, don't do that, or pay attention to this, think about this. Like, so I just went based on passion rather than a business plan of, I'm going to go in and photograph, 90s hip hop. Like, there was no...
And in the 90s, at that time, did you think living or being raised in Jersey, do you think it helped you more than it hurt you as it relates to? If somebody, like I say, for instance, if you told me, well, I grew up in Harlem, and I've seen all these people,
right.
and I'm close to them,
right?
It had to be a little harder for you because you're not, when you go to Jersey, you hear crickets and
right.
You got the grass, and
right.
we had this conversation earlier
about watching the deers in the backyard,
right? So my thing is, yes. So there's nothing culturally significant there,
right?
So it had to come from up here in some way, right?
Like
you had to think that, okay, I want to take pictures like this picture of Harold. Look at this picture of the great Harold. I'm going to show you eventually when I can get my hand on it. Harold Hunter,
yes,
right?
Wow.
Great skateboarder,
yes.
And salute to him. So yeah, it had to come from up here. Like the creative energy had to come from your mind, and your drive and your passion had to, I don't know how you got to the city every day. You took the train or
the train
bus.
or the bus from New Brunswick, which is one town over from me, but that's where Rutgers University is, and there's a train that comes to New York basically every half hour, or there's a
Right.
bus every hour
Right.
that you can get from New Brunswick into the city.
Mm-hmm.
But it coming into the city, it was an adventure. Like I didn't think of the fear factor. I didn't worry about if I go to South Bronx, this is going to happen to me. Because I remember like a few years ago, my son saying like, you know, but you were around people who were this kind of person or that kind of person,
Right,
or this
right.
kind of I'm not going to label labels,
Right.
but I'm like, I didn't think about it in that moment. Like I didn't
Right.
know that this person was involved with X, Y, Z, or this person was suspected of, or whatever that it was. I just took the person on face value. I remember the first time that I went to the South Bronx and I think it was 93, and I didn't know jack about the South Bronx. And I went there to meet Fat Joe because he had just done some graffiti piece that was going to go in the Source. But again, I'm the suburban, like, I'm sure I stood out like a light pole. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I didn't look the part of South Bronx.
Right, right.
I look more like just a typical skater, but in the 90s, which was even more bizarre.
Different, very different.
Right,
Especially
so
for a young black man,
yeah, exactly.
right? Yeah.
So I remember Joe picking me up or meeting me at the subway station or whatever. And then I think he drove me to whatever the spot was, and I took a couple pictures or whatever, and we were hanging out for a minute. And then I remember him driving me back to the subway, and then he's like, I remember him saying like, "Be careful out there." And I didn't have any like, "Be careful." What are you talking about?
Be careful. I tell you right there, son.
I didn't
Right,
know,
right. You're like,
but
what
I
do you
had
mean?
no reference point of perspective. And then I remember my second time in the Bronx. It was in '94, photographing DJ Doo-Wop and the Bounce Squad. And
Oh
this
yeah,
was during
salute
the
to my
day.
dude Doo-Wop, man.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
But I remember getting off the subway wherever it was in the Bronx, and I remember getting off the subway, walking towards where his building was, and it reminded me of the Public Enemy song "Night of the Living Bassheads" because I had never seen that kind of scene before. You know what I mean? You don't
Yeah.
see that in the suburbs,
Right.
or
Right.
even in New Brunswick, which is one town over from me. Like back in the '90s. You had like Rutgers University, you had the big hospitals, but then you had a certain part of New Brunswick that was more hoodish.
Sketchy?
All right, I was trying to be nice, sketchy, but I never dealt with the sketchiness of it. You heard the stories of the sketchiness.
Sure.
But being in the South Bronx, walking towards DJ Doo-Wop's place or whatever, and seeing people, you know, on drugs and just how drugs affected people, I remember that being a very shocking image to me, but I didn't let it affect me. And then even going back to the subway and again watching the people like being affected by drugs, I had never seen anything like that. You know.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, but again, being here, being around the environment, and again, not knowing, I think also helped me to have a clearer perspective of just photographing what I'm looking at versus having this picture of what I assume these people or these moments are going to be like.
Right. Like you were literally just taking the photograph as it was.
Yes.
Right? Not diving into all of these deep aspects.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, that in itself helps you collect such an array of great photos, man.
Sure.
You know, and I look at this book, like there's a lot of people who actually do books that have photos of iconic rappers or people who are part of our culture.
Right.
You know, but I really like your images.
I do too.
You know, your images are very captivating, and they're totally different.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't seen them in any other place.
Right.
You know, so at what point did you say to yourself, well, I can do a book of my own. I could self-publish my own book.
It started in, I want to say like 2017-ish, or even probably before that, because I knew I had all this material that I was sitting on, all these photos, slides, negatives, prints. But there was also very little outlet. So what I ended up, where the desire first started, when I first started organizing my images, is first to see what I had, and then next when I started sharing on social media.
Right.
Sharing on social media, the reason why I even did that is I remember seeing on Facebook, even before I started sharing, people would take old magazine, cutouts or whatever,
Yeah.
whether the Source,
Right,
whatever,
right.
and start putting it on Facebook. And I'm like, why are? And I remember asking one of my friends who really got it back then, why are people taking these old images and putting them on Facebook? I'm like, this shit's old.
Right.
And he's like, you don't get it. Like people revere
haven't
the
seen
90s.
that, right.
Very few had seen it because
Yeah.
back then you only saw it in magazines and there was no web, there was no social media sharing.
Right.
So people were resharing what they felt passionate about. And I remember my friend also telling me like why the 90s were so special to so many people, where
Right.
my perspective of the 90s was completely different because I was photographing and I sort of lived it to the degree that I enjoyed it. And then when I didn't enjoy it anymore, I literally just walked away from it and did
Right.
something else.
You were kind of like on the outside looking in.
Right.
Right.
So I could dip my foot in, have fun, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going
Not
over
today.
here now. Yeah,
Right.
I was done.
Going back
and
to
I literally just went a completely different direction when it was over. But getting back to what made me self-published is first starting on social media and starting to share the material and understanding what people enjoyed, and also reading people's comments on certain pictures, because a lot of it I didn't necessarily in the beginning remember all the years or remember all the places, but people would say, no, that's, this happened in 1997, not 1995, because this person's wearing this shirt, or no, this picture, like I remember the picture of Harold Hunter, he's wearing Air Max 95s in one of the pictures, and I thought it was like 93 for whatever reason. The person's like, no, it's 95 because he's wearing quote unquote 95. I'm like, oh, okay, but it helped, like the community of people who were started following me, it helped me to get my linear timeline together better by posting and sharing and people commenting on the different stuff. So at that point I was able to structure, like, okay, these images are people feel are important, so I want to put these into a book, and then having the right people around me to say, okay, if you're going to do a book, you need to write stories to go against it, like just tell about the moments. And I would start writing or whatever, and then thankfully I reached out to people who were better at writing, and I had them do copy editing. And I remember the one person I worked with, I'm still working with now, in terms of writing, the way that she would ask me questions or how to think about writing it differently. And then now when I write, I can write from a perspective of her asking me all these questions. So when the person reads the story, they can dive into it, but also they can fluidly go through it and really experience the moment in terms of how I write it against it.
Yeah, and I think that's what your pictures are doing, is like they're really so immersive, right? And then the captions on the side just kind of really bring you into that moment. So whether you were alive during that time, but like if you have a true love for hip hop, I just feel like this book is gonna just bring you right in.
Right. It's a fun time.
Look at these pictures.
Yeah, and it's not from a specific perspective, because all the images look completely different.
They have different timelines, different artists, different stages, different, like even you capturing Lauryn Hill in the middle of like taking her break from directing a music.
Right.
Golden.
Right.
You know what I mean? Golden.
Yeah, so that's why I asked these questions about your access, because you had to be actually in the studio.
He was in there.
Right.
You had to actually be in the studio.
All in the studio.
It's not like this is
in there.
This is not a cut and paste kind of deal.
No.
You know what I mean? You had to literally be there, which is cool. De La Soul in the building, right?
What's interesting about this picture, when they were recording the session,
Tribe Called Quest.
This was in 1995, and this was the fall of 1995, and I had just started working at the Source as the photo editor. And every day during that time period, I would leave the office and I would walk up the block to Platinum Island Recording Studios, because my friend was managing there. And Platinum Studio was, anyway,
legendary.
Yeah, back in the day. So I would go there because my friend, she was managing, and her circle of people always had the best weed back then. So we would all play this game: who has the better weed today?
Why do I know weed played a part in this process?
Y'all see me after the show. I'm gonna win.
So I would see De La like pretty much every day in Most Def. Like I would go in the studio for the most part, hang out, say hi, whatever, bullshit. But for the most part, I didn't take their pictures while they were working. It was just sort of like a social thing. But I remember one day I happened to have my camera with me, which was this day that these shots were taken. And like I was just a fly on the wall, and they let me take a bunch of pictures while they were working. And like and it was what it was. But what's interesting is Most Def is not in any of these pictures. And back then, Most Def wasn't. I don't think he was.
He's in here,
He's
though.
in the book.
He's
in the book, but from the De La session.
Yeah.
But what was interesting during that time period of hanging out with Most Def, like we used to just call him D back in the day. Everybody just called him DD. And during that time period, I'll never forget. One morning, I was prepping to come to the city, and my mother had the TV on, and it was the A&E channel, and I heard D's voice on the TV. I'm like, because he has such a distinct voice.
He does.
And I'm like, that's D, and I didn't know, So I remember going around the corner to the TV that was on, and I was shocked because it was Most Def or D and Bill Cosby acting on a show called Cosby Mystery Show.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, wait, what? And I remember later that afternoon, and coming in the city, I was literally skating down Broadway near the Flatiron Building. Most Def was sitting on a park bench reading a book with his dry cleaning to his side. And I remember skating down, I saw it, and I pulled up on him like,
type behavior.
I was like, yo, D. I was like, tell me why. I just saw you on TV with Bill Cosby. He starts cracking up. He's like, oh, that's some old acting stuff I used to do.
Hilarious.
And I was like, what? I was like, all right, I'll catch you later. Meaning I was going to see him later at the De La studio. De La's, session or whatever, but I had no idea back then that he was no one knew, well, maybe a few people, but he hadn't blown up as a rapper just yet, and he was just in the background. So for me, he was just one of De La's friends, so I didn't even think about taking a picture of him back then.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, so it's just one of those moments where you're just being in the moment, just being a person. Because during the 90s, like, it wasn't always about capturing a moment, it wasn't always about taking a moment to necessarily share it.
Right,
it was
just taking a picture.
It was a time where you could just sort of float in between, and that's what I'm grateful about the 90s.
Yeah, when I took pictures back in the 90s, I took it with an Instamatic camera. You know, the kind that you buy in the store and you would hear it go.
Right.
Yeah, so those
they may not even know. Right. What are you talking about?
You took the whole box to like one of these places that printed photos.
Yeah.
So like that's why I look at your images like they're so off the hook. Fresh, like, like crazy.
And you made a point of saying, like, I don't know what page it was, but you were like, we didn't have cell phones. There was no checking. It was take the picture and hope for the best. Right. So you really have to have an eye.
Yes, you have to
because I'm
trust your
sure
gut.
9 out of 10 of your pictures were like gold.
Right. Right.
So how do you feel like you were able to build up to developing that really, really keen eye to know how to just hit that moment, because you've been doing it for so long and you're building momentum and you're moving?
I don't think back then, I don't think I thought about it. Like, you just trusted your gut.
Right.
It was kind of like an analogy I used to use back in the day was like the story of the old poor farmer. Where he and his son are out hunting for the family dinner, and they only have 3 bullets. And you got to feed your family. So with me, it was with film. Yeah. So it's part of it is patience, but also part of it is knowing your craft and trusting yourself and slowing down enough to make sure, like, whether you're setting a light, whether you're taking a picture, looking at the person, making sure your focus is right, and then also just then you do all these crazy calculations that you don't think about, making sure that one moment is right, and then when you really see it, that's when you hit the trigger kind of thing, and that's what it was about for me. Like, whether it was like this picture of Lauryn Hill and D'Angelo, even though it's a very paparazzi, like straight up like moment, but it's literally just waiting for that moment and feeling.
That's crazy right there.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful photo, right?
That's an amazing photo.
Yeah. That's
and
a
it's like
beautiful
you
photo.
photograph it, but you don't see it for another 2 days. You know what I mean? But you trust your gut enough that you got the moment.
You went to the photo mat too?
Well, yeah, we had photo mats, but not during this time. But during the 70s into the early 80s, we had a photo mat not too far.
But I want to be clear on the fact that I know this book is entitled "The Rare and Unseen Moments of '90s Hip Hop," but you have
a collector's edition.
You have you have iconic pictures of other type of artists too. Like you have Bootsy in here. You have. We already talked about Harold, from your skateboard days, and Donald Byrd, which is iconic as hell.
Yes,
like Donald Byrd is like really.
Yeah,
that's when I saw that I was like, this book is fire. You know what I mean? 'Cause like, who has a picture of what hip hop photographer has a picture of Donald Byrd? Like,
and it was interesting because when I photographed Donald Byrd, fall of 1993, it was Guru had to do a Jazzmatazz session in Atlantic City.
That's right.
And it was one of those moments where, again, I think it was either the publicist at Chrysalis Records or someone from the photo stock agency said, "Oh, Guru's going to be in Atlantic City. Do you want to go photograph him?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah!" I was like, I had a car. You know what I mean? And one of my homeboys, who I felt, and I still think he's a better photographer than me, but he had lighting equipment, so I convinced him somehow to go with me to Atlantic City, throw all his equipment in car. We drove down there, and then we got there while they were doing sound check. And I introduced myself to Guru, and he allowed me to set up the lights, and while they were doing their sound check and rehearsals or whatever, and then in between them rehearsing, somehow I was able to convince, Donald Byrd to give me a moment on the side, and we lit him up, like set up the lights properly, and I remember just photographing him or Roy Ayers, but I didn't know who they were at the time. Like, I saw them as like my elders, like Donald Byrd, like his face and his nose, he has the same nose as my father's mother's mother. Like literally, they could be brothers. Wow. That same like Native American
so
looking.
Let me ask you a question. So you were there to follow them,
right?
And you didn't know who they were.
Correct. Yes. I mean, I knew. Here's how
blessed are you, right?
Wait, here's the funny. I remember saying, I remember I kept calling Guru Gangstar because I didn't know his name was Guru.
Oh my
Because that's how corny I was back then. And he didn't say it. He never corrected me. You know what I mean?
What?
Because maybe it was just the energy and the vibe of my sincereness of being around them and taking my time and photographing them. You know what I mean? Where I kept calling him Gangstar, and he never corrected me. And I was just, and I didn't know. And I didn't know, again, who Roy Ayers was.
Youngin, just shoot the pictures.
But I got a bunch of beautiful pictures of them during that session. You know what I mean? Like them rehearsing the actual showcase performance itself, and then like the typical stuff of the executives and Guru, and even the comedian Paul Mooney and Guru together. Wow. So all these people were there, and I had these beautiful moments, you know. And then that was in '93. So I'm trying to think the next time I photographed Guru. It might have been sometime in '95. But what was interesting is in '95 again. Being at the Source, or even before I got to the Source, I was always at the Source's office, and where the Source was located at 594 Broadway, like two storefronts down from where the Source was Empire Management, where Guru's management was. So a bunch of my friends were interns there, so I'd go and visit my intern friends, and then Guru would be in the office, and then like he would always just see me and have a point of reference. Like the group home would drop in there while I was visiting or whatever. So it just made for this unique friendship that's what the '90s allowed for. Is you had these moments outside of the TV cameras or the film cameras or even in magazines where you can just be one-on-one friendly with people. You know what I mean? Right. So that's one of the beauties of being around during the '90s, and Guru just being a gracious person. Okay, let me rewind. So in '94, I did photograph Guru. I was trying to remember. In '94, April of '94, I remember I had made friends with the guys or the group Diggable Planets. So they allowed me to come to the studio while they were working on the Blowout Comb album. And I remember during one of the sessions, they were working on this one song, and then the door opens and it's Guru or whatever, and they're like, we're greeting Guru, and they're talking whatever, and then they go to introduce me to Guru or whatever. Me and Guru see each other like we're old friends, like right. Like just like dapping it up, having a good old time or whatever. And then again, it allowed for, because you're personable with the people, where they sort of forget about you after a certain point. So I photographed a bunch of stuff of Guru and the people from Diggable Planets. Thank you, Butterfly, Ladybug, and Doodlebug, for giving me that space and time to come there and photograph you guys while you're working. But I remember, like, what's in the book is there's a moment where Ladybug, Mecca, and Guru are in the green room together, and they're just talking and vibing. And I'm across from them, and I see this beautiful energy happen, and I just slowly pick up my camera, and I'm watching them, and then I happen to pick up and look at them, and then Ladybug Mecca just happens to look at Guru. Guru happens to pick his head up and look at me, and it was such a beautiful moment. I just took one picture and then put my camera away and just left, because like you can't add on to something like that.
And that was the shot, right? That was the one.
But that in itself that speaks to the energy. That speaks to the creativity of a photographer.
Absolutely.
On his level. You know, it's not, excuse me, listen to me. I want you guys to know, if you heard me sniffling, like, it's not because I was sniffing coke or nothing. I don't do that again. It's because it's spring and my allergies are tripping.
Who in the world is ever thinking that you're sniffing coke?
Listen to me. People think weird shit. This is 2024. Right. People say all kinds of stuff online. Trust me. I'm being clear.
This is why I don't do Twitter fingers, because I'll find your address and just come knock at your door. What did you say?
That's what I was trying to tell you in regards to your creativity. It's the creativity of you tapping that button. Right. You know, I think Kiana spoke to this earlier about how you don't have a cell phone to look and see if that photo is going to be hot before you take it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you flying blind.
Right. But you feel it, like you just.
But you feel it, and that's creative energy. That's something that should be celebrated. I mean, because everybody can't do that.
Right.
I know people that take horrible pictures.
Right.
They just can't take a good picture and save their life.
It's so easy. You know what I mean? Like I remember. I forget what year this was, but when Blackberries were the thing. And I remember someone saying, "Oh, you don't have a camera?" I was like, "No," because I stopped doing photography. I said, "It doesn't matter what your tool that you're using to capture a moment." And I remember I had these 4 people in front of, I forget what store it was, but I literally just remember just slowing down, watching the 4 of them. And I remember with my Blackberry just going click. And I remember showing them, like,
and
see
the
how dope this
Blackberry was
is?
a shitty camera.
Yeah. But it's a matter of, like, your tool.
Yeah,
like, you can always capture a moment when you feel it.
Right.
In my mind.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
So Donald Byrd, Harold. Right. To Harold. What's Harold doing now?
Harold passed in...
That's right. He passed away, right?
2008 or 2009.
Yeah, I didn't know. I'm sorry, I didn't know he passed away.
Yeah.
But he was dope. He was iconic in the movie
Kids
with Rosario Dawson.
Yes.
That's why I first saw him.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But salute to him. I didn't know he passed away.
Yeah, I've known Harold since '88, and thankfully there's a Harold Hunter Foundation that carries on his legacy of reaching out to minorities, not just minorities, to all kids. But they're very heavy here in New York, and they're very actively involved in the skateboarding industry, and doing everything from lessons to workshops to professionally teaching kids about just business in general. So the Harold Hunter Foundation, I've done a few projects with them, and it's funny you were mentioning the instant like point and shoot cameras, where I did a clinic with kids, younger kids at a skate park where they had the little point and shoot camera with the flash on it, and I was basically I explained to them of the how to capture an actual moment, and a few things we had gone through. I was just like because they were all skaters. I said think about doing an ollie, like you're gonna run up, you're gonna drop your back foot, pick your front foot up, and what the height of when an ollie is an ollie, when both feet are up or whatever, and when it comes down. So you know when that right motion is to capture the height of a picture. So I explained that and a few other things. And then as we're doing the workshop, it was later in the evening, someone was videotaping it. You see these little kids with the little like point and shoot little Instamatic cameras or whatever. But and as you're watching it and it was videoed, you see one kid was going up to do an ollie over another board, and like as soon as they hit the height of the ollie, you see the little kids flash go off and like they got it. They got it. You had to explain to them like what that moment is. You know what I mean? So that was the Harold Hunter Foundation. So they're doing so many great things for kids.
That's great.
Yeah, salute to him. I didn't know he passed away.
Yeah,
but he was iconic in itself because he brought skateboarding to another level.
Absolutely,
and to the culture.
Yeah, no question, bro.
He was one of the first. Like, I have a story that you can see on my Instagram reel somewhere where I'm with Mos Def and we're going through one of my older books, and he pauses on the picture of Harold Hunter, and he goes into the first time he had ever seen Harold Hunter. Mos Def was 16. They were in the Bronx somewhere. It was 11:30 at night, and he just he didn't know what he was watching because he had never seen a black person on a skateboard. And he was watching Harold Hunter.
That was dope.
Yeah, so it was very rare.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So this is your first book. Do you plan on making another one?
That's actually my fourth book technically.
Okay.
So I did Rare and Unseen.
Hold on, wait. So you had 2 or 3 other books before this?
Correct. Yeah. I did
and I'm not in any of them.
No.
What's up with this? I don't appreciate this.
They were test runs. They were smaller test runs.
Okay, what's going on?
There was Rare and Unseen moments of 90s.
What's going on here, man? I was
1, 2, and 3.
Hey, D, come on, we gotta get rid of him. Because I can't do this here. This is not gonna work.
Oh, man.
So I did Rare and Unseen Moments of 90s Hip Hop Volume 1, 2, and 3, which basically made up this book.
Right.
I redesigned this, and then So those are the first 3 books, and then I did a collector's edition gold book, which was very similar to this, but it had gold foil on it, beautiful page. It was like $100, it was a $300 art book, and I only made 100 of them. But I wanted to make a similar version, redesigned, that was affordable for everyday purposes and get a better distribution. Because with that one, there was only 100 copies made, I couldn't really get distribution on it. So I needed to create something that everyone could really enjoy, like a coffee table book. Right. And I had it redesigned on the inside, added more stories, more photos.
This is exactly where mine is on my coffee table. I have so many nice books of the hip hop culture on my table.
And what's beautiful about it, I remember it's happened twice.
I appreciate
someone wondering, oh, is it acceptable for kids to read? And I remember there was a story that someone bought the books years ago, telling me that they would read the stories in the books to their kids at night. I was just like, what? I never, because they're very simple stories. You know what I mean about time period.
These parents are similar to my teaching style when it comes to being a parent, right? You have to immerse your children into not just the future and the present, but into the past, so that they can understand, and they can digest, and they can, form. You should see my 25-year-old, my 23-year-old. Their playlists are insane.
Awesome.
From Elton John to Drake, right? Like it's so versatile, and I love that.
Right. Yeah. You have to be. I mean, to me, like that's all what Midas Drake, all kinds of music that I grew up in the suburbs. Because it was like
I grew up in the projects, and I'm still the same way though, because I was a heavy metalhead at one point. Right. Like I've gone the full gamut.
Right. And like when I'm talking about when I go back to Jersey at night from leaving, the city, York. Part of my crew was like a skate, motley crew. So it's just like around the punk rock kids, along with black, we were just a mixture of everyone. And even the scenes that I hung out in New Jersey were part of the punk rock scene, because that's where the youth culture would just went to support everyone's bands or whatever. It wasn't that I was the big punk rock kid, but it's you just went to support your friends. That's where the energy was. That's where the fun was.
And that's where you received the support in return.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So it's like
a mixture of the crowds.
So I see you have images here.
Yes.
So let's see some of these things right here, because I really want to see what you brought to show them show the audience.
All right.
Okay, let me.
I'll let you. All right.
No, you can show them. And I see you got Big L on the top.
So I'll right here.
Classic.
So this is in 1993. This was at Columbia Records when Columbia Records was on 55th and Madison. This was during a what do they used to call those days? A press day.
Oh, press day.
So during press days back in the day, publicists
Those
would
are on every Wednesday, right? Like a Wednesday. They used to do that. Yeah.
So they would invite, the independent, photographers and writers to come and meet the new artists. So at this time, it was. I'm trying to think. I forgot who all was there, but I remember Big L being there. Wyclef and Praz from the Fugees were there, so I got pictures of them from the same session. But I remember Big L. I didn't know who he was, but there was some presence about him that made me stop and want to get a picture of him. So I took this picture during that press day in 1993 of Big L.
Rest in peace, Big
That's
L.
in your book. This is in the book.
Yes, that's also in the book. And
No
what was
question.
interesting about that time for me specifically, I remember when I actually got the Big L promo album, I really didn't care for his sound back then because in my mind, like that was the same. He was coming out the same time that Nas was coming out, so my ear was more tuned to like a Nas sound.
Big L was ill though, man. He was ill.
I liked him when he went out on his own. You know what I mean? Like he was definitely ill. Like when he had Ebonics and he did. That's when I really gravitated to L.
Big L
but
was
initially,
ill.
I just.
Glory to God, man.
I love him, but I'm just being honest.
Rest
I'm
in
allowed
peace
to be
to Big L,
honest.
son.
Just say, just being honest.
Yeah.
Just being honest.
So this is
That's the RZA.
the RZA from Wu-Tang Clan. This was in 1996. This was during this was at the other MTV studios where they'd have live performances. So this is the RZA outside of the MTV studio, about to come in, showing his rings. And at that time, I knew RZA, but I didn't have a relationship with him. And he was literally just walking up the sidewalk, and I remember seeing his rings, and I just asked him, "Hey, RZA, can I just get a quick picture?" And he pulled up the rings, and I got 2 shots of this.
He was looking to punch you in the face.
No, RZA's peace.
No,
It's all about that.
all
Have you
good.
guys heard his meditation?
Like,
he's
he's
all
on
about
another-
that.
he's on
chi.
another level.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
on another level. RZA is.
So I have
is-
nothing but
is
respect
chill.
and admiration for RZA. This is Miss Erykah Badu.
Absolutely.
This was in 1997. This is interestingly enough, this is when she was in concert. Even though she's looking like dead at me, but it was during concert. But it was the height of like her beautiful energy in 1997. And going back to when we were talking about social media and people commenting and you learning things. So I remember. There was this picture, and then I have another photograph of Erykah turning slightly to the right. And I remember her writing that she was literally going off stage to do a breast pump because she was feeding her daughter breast milk. So this was during that era. That's why she's glowing, because she was in her.
You definitely
her
see that
element.
glow in her. Yeah.
So this was. I mean, I love this shot of Erykah, and she loves it. And
She looks amazing.
The pictures from the book. I see all these pictures from the book. Hold on. I'm gonna pull out what we can talk about because we.
Okay, pressing on time.
No question. Oh, here go your man. So here we go.
We had the pre-interview for like an
Guru
hour,
here.
right?
Look,
Yes.
Guru right here.
So that was in 1997. He was working on one of his Bald Head Slick projects. And it was, again, one of those times where I went over to his management company just to visit my friends or whatever. And I remember them telling me, "Oh, Guru's in the studio. Why don't you go over there and take some pictures?" So I went to Firehouse Studios while Guru was working. And I asked him, I was like, "Do you mind if I, take some pictures while you're working?" And he was like, "Nah." So I spent, I don't know, maybe an hour or two just sort of fly on the wall waiting for certain moments to just capture of him.
Dope, man. Okay, so this picture is fire. Classic Tupac.
Yes.
Lil C's, the homie Stretch, D,
Biggie
there.
right in the center.
No doubt,
Yes,
bro.
sir.
Biggie, yep,
Right there.
yep.
Yeah.
Salute to Big, salute to Pac, salute to Stretch too, my homie Stretch. Lil C's, respect D. Dope picture, man. That
And
picture's dope.
again, me not knowing people, this is one of those moments of not knowing people.
Wow.
Who didn't you know?
Who didn't you know?
So what this was, the night I photographed this, I was interviewing Onyx for a piece for Thrasher magazine.
Okay. Right.
And they were opening up for Public Enemy.
Right.
So we were on the stage before the stage opened up or whatever, where I was photographing Onyx. And as I finished photographing Onyx, I heard someone yelling, "Yo, come take our picture." And I said, "Sure, just give me a minute." I said, "Yo, come over here." So after I told Onyx to go back to the dressing room, got my camera equipment back together, walked across the stage to the other side of the stage, actually, because if you look in the old Thrasher issue, you can see the same bricks on the wall on the other side. So I went up to the guys, looked at them, took one picture of them and said thank you and went to Onyx's dressing room. But I didn't know who they were.
Oh my
so
God.
after I got it developed, like I realized it was Tupac because the slide for years I'd run on the side Tupac middle finger, but I couldn't do anything with that because magazines wouldn't run someone holding up the middle finger.
Right, not
so
them,
it wasn't
yeah.
until 2010-ish or whatever when I'm reorganizing my slides and I look at the Tupac middle finger slide and I paused and I really, really looked at it and I started laughing and laughing because I'd realized Biggie was in the center
Biggie's
of
right
it.
there.
And they're all wearing I'm a Bad Boy shirt
Right.
on. You know what I mean? So it was
It's
one of those moments where you had to
This is
laugh.
classic.
That's
right here.
historical,
Yeah.
legendary.
This is
Like
classic
you're
right
not gonna get it again.
Okay, I'm picking it. I love the fact that I'm picking these right now. Look at this one right here. Were you there? Like,
That's
that
the only way to
Snoop?
take the
that's
picture.
crazy
Snoop,
right
right?
there.
Yeah, Snoop and Dre. Like that was the moment where you got no love for the West Coast.
We were,
no love.
Yeah.
we were there. We
Yeah.
were there.
Yeah.
And Dre was there. Yeah.
So, yeah.
95. This is 95.
Yes.
95, right?
Which awards were those?
This is
The
Source
Source
Awards.
Source Awards,
in
yeah,
1995.
yeah.
And I had
You
to
got no
sneak-
love. You got no love for
the
Snoop
West
Dogg
Coast,
and
right.
Dr. Dre.
Uh-huh.
You got no
Right.
love for
I
Death
remember they were going
Row.
off.
Yeah.
That's the picture right there, man. That's iconic as hell
That is
right
that
there.
That is
moment.
iconic.
Woo!
And I had to even sneak into that. Even like this was right before I went
That's
on
the
staff.
one you talked yourself into,
I had,
right?
Yeah,
right,
literally, that's
right,
another
I was
moment. I had to
reading
talk
that.
myself into it.
He's like, I arrived early.
I got it
Still
during
haven't
sound check.
yet, but
Right,
I'm
if-
gonna come back.
I'm gonna share a little gem with people, and hopefully no one abuses this.
Right.
The best time, if you don't have a photo pass, but you're there for the right reason, figure out when sound check is.
That's right.
Go and you'll be able to meet the road manager, whoever.
Yeah.
Talk to them. They'll be able to give you credentials. But because if you wait until security gets there,
It's
security's
over.
already on the clock,
They're
and they're
gonna
going to be
shut you down.
security.
That's
Exactly.
right.
So
They're gonna secure that ass.
Yeah. So I always found out when or figured out when sound check would be.
Yeah.
And I always went if I didn't have a pass, went during sound check, met the people, created a relationship.
That's right.
And it makes a big difference rather than just being ex photographer in the photo
Absolutely.
kit. Yeah.
As far as Jersey goes, this next picture is probably one of the biggest groups ever
Okay.
in New Jersey, the Fugees.
Oh yes, of course, absolutely.
Wycliffe Jean, Praz,
Lauren
Lauryn
Hill.
Hill.
I mean,
Yeah. That was a good time.
classic.
You were this was in the studio? What was it?
No, this was again at Columbia Records. This was I don't know what we were doing. This was in December of 1995, and the reason why you could tell there's like Christmas ornaments right up here.
Oh, yeah,
So it was
I see.
like in the
Uh-huh.
I don't know if we were in the, not a conference room or some dining area or whatever. But for whatever reason, I decided to photograph them that day. But I had such a relationship with them from when they're from '93 when I first met them. I'd gone to a few of their shows, and we found out we were both from Jersey.
Right.
Created this relationship. They had seen some of my work, and then in August of '94, Wycliffe actually hired me to photograph his wedding in 1994. And then
Oh,
at
that's
the-
nice.
Get
Yeah,
out.
so I mean Jersey represent.
Wow.
And then the craziest part is at the wedding reception, I was standing with Lauryn Hill and we're talking or whatever, and her father walks over and I look at him like, I know you. Come to find out, the reason why I knew him is he was a computer scientist for AT&T back in the late 80s, early 90s, and he used to work with my friend's mother, who also was a computer scientist for AT&T, and they used to work on projects together, and I would see him
small
every so
worlds.
often, and I just knew him by his first name. I didn't know him as Mr. Mr. Hill or whatever.
Right, right.
So when Lauren introduced me, I said, and I explained how I knew him. His eyes lit up, her eyes lit up, like super small world.
It
Like
is a small
you got to be
world.
nice to everyone because you don't know who you're gonna meet later on.
That's
in
right.
life.
That's
And,
dope,
and I
bro.
was gonna say that earlier, like even as you introduced and you were like, being on my show, when you connect with people, you have got to give that great energy, right?
Right.
Like that's how you've been able to kick down doors that you weren't even supposed to
Right.
be in.
Literally, yes.
Giving people that best version of you,
Right.
and I just feel like it's so important to give that to everybody.
I would show
on a daily
you
basis.
all the pictures, but listen to me. That's going to take away from the book. You need to buy the book.
That's
this
right,
is
buy
why
the
we're
book.
here. For you to buy this book. Where can they get your book?
They can get it on my website, t.eric.com, TDOTERIC.com. You can also, if you need to go another route, it's available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNobles.com, Walmart.com, Target.com,
Everywhere.
all the .coms.
All the .coms.
but yeah, if you could buy it off my website, I get a little bit more from
That's
it.
right. Support the actual
We're going to be standing on the
artists.
corner selling the book. Yeah, like
Okay,
crack.
out the
Yes.
trunk.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
We're going to be selling I got that book, son. I got that book. I got that book, son. You ready,
That rare
son?
Nazi
Got that
moments,
90s
John,
hip-hop, son.
And the beautiful thing about it is you're not going to find my work in well, there's only one other book that it's the rap tees book put out by DJ Ross One, where I allowed him to use some of my work because they were used on T-shirts in other places. But other than that, you're not going to find my work in other people's books.
This is your exclusive work.
Yeah, and for years I was very conscious about always wanting to put out my own work within my own title.
Yeah.
And then when Chi Modu was alive, God rest in peace to Chi. Like Chi and I were very much on like you have to figure out independent ways of doing it, and it's not always the most successful routes in the beginning, but at least you allow your name to be shown first versus a collector's collective project, whatever. And I support everyone who's doing everything, but I always wanted to keep my projects within sort of my own hub of creativity. So in doing this, and even my next book is called A Visual Story of Hip Hop, and I did a ebook version of it a few years ago, but I figured out a better way of making it into a book. So hopefully by fall of 2025 that'll come out in hardcover, and it's going to be a beautiful book and more stories, and it also it'll be not say a little bit less pictures. It'll be more. There'll be key moments, but then you'll also get a lot more B-roll. So, for example, the picture of Ladybug Mecca and Guru, you'll also see a lot of other pictures from the Diggable Planets Blowout Comb session, or you'll see more pictures of Guru while he's working by himself. So I'm going to give you more perspective.
Oh, B-roll is great, right? Like it's all those extra shots.
Always.
Right, because you don't know who's going to be in the shot. It's kind of like the Biggie Tupac picture. Who knew was in there?
Never knew.
Because another example of that is I have a picture of Parliament Funkadelic in the book, a black and white shot, and also the Bootsy shot. But also during that same time period, I had photographed Amp Fiddler, who had just just passed. But I didn't know that I had photographed Amp Fiddler. But the thing was, when he passed, something was like, "Go look at your negatives," and I'm like, and I had to think like, where would he be? And I'm like, because I remember certain shots, but I remember there was a whole rehearsal area at this airport hangout that we were at, and I have these two beautiful shots that are on my Instagram of Amp Fiddler on his keyboards or whatever, and it's a beautiful shot of him, but I didn't know who he was at the time. So it's just like you sort of photograph everything and just go back and trust your gut.
And then figure it out later.
Yes.
Take a picture, figure it out later.
You've been so blessed, man.
Yes, you have.
To take pictures of people that don't know who they are, and they wind up being all these great people.
Right.
It's unbelievable, man. Look here, this is great. Okay, all right, listen, I have a question for you. So first off, do you have a favorite image or iconic image of or artist that you think was your favorite photo shoot?
I mean, in terms of fun, it would have to be Old Dirty Bastard. And the reason why I say that is I got to spend one full day with him.
Right.
And it was just me and him. There was no fanfare. There was no... He didn't have to act like Old Dirty Bastard.
Right, and you said he dipped in and out of that character to his like normal self.
Correct. Yeah. So the part of it was going with him to Harlem, watching him, get trimmed up or whatever, and then taking pictures of him during him just getting trimmed up, and then that final moment before we left where he takes his glasses out, and has the one lens missing, and he looks at me, and like that's that one strong portrait that I have of him.
Yeah.
And then later that afternoon we came down here to the Lower East Side, and then we were on Avenue B and 2nd Street, and at the time on one side of the street was a artsy junkyard called, I think it was called Robots or something like that. And I remember us getting out of his car service, and we both looked at each other, and we looked at the junkyard, and we looked at each other, and like two little kids, we ran over to the junkyard, and we started climbing on shit.
Wow.
It was just like it was a very silly, fun kid moment, you know what I mean? And it's like we just did it to start climbing and just being silly. And then I ended up there's one picture in the book where there's like a rusted car door with the Cost and Rev sticker on it, and then him on the other side. He almost looks like I don't know, like larger than life.
Yeah.
But that was one of those moments when we finally settled down. And I shot him all the way up there. But it was just a fun moment being around him. And then we ended up going across the street, and we shot stuff on the roof on Avenue B and 2nd Street. Hope if I'm saying it wrong, I'm sorry. But it was like in photographing him, I didn't direct him. It was him, like we were in one area, and he just put on these different Old Dirty Bastard persona kind of poses or whatever, and then towards the very end, like him just being like in his own space, and me just looking at him and photographing him in his own mind, in his own space.
Right.
So I got these very interesting perspectives of just about Old Dirty Bastard or Russell Jones.
Right.
And I remember the year, I think like that was the fall of 95. And I think at some point in 96, he might have gone to jail. And then I remember when he got out of jail, he wasn't the same person. Like he was, old Osiris or something, or Big Baby Jesus.
That's right.
And I remember he was just like different, like on a different level of life at that point. And I remember we were at the Irving Plaza where the Roots used to do the Roots jams. And, artists from out of town would come and they do a whole Roots jam session. And I remember being backstage and walking from the green room, walking towards the stage, and I'm like in the middle there, and I hear Old Dirty Bastard down the hall making all these crazy sounds like just being like Old Dirty Bastard. And I remember he got within maybe 10 feet of me, and then he stopped making that crazy noise. And he walks up and like, "Hey, how you been?" And I'm like, looking up like, he's like, "How's your cousin?" I'm like, "Wait, my cousin?" I said, "What cousin?"
Like that
he's
Dave
like, "Remember?"
Chappelle,
He's like,
John,
"Remember we went up on the roof?" I'm like,
right.
I was like, "Oh," I was like, shit. And I was just like, it, like we started having a normal conversation, but then someone started walking over. Then he had to click back into character. And he's like, and walked away. I was like, "Motherfucker, no way,
that's crazy.
No way!" But he always kept in character, And then even that night, he ended up like, causing chaos and got the Roots kicked out of Irving or banned from Irving Plaza for like 10 years or whatever.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, that same night.
True ODB fashion.
Yeah. I mean, there's video footage of that night, and like the people talk about the night that Old Dirty Bastard, ruined the Roots show and got them banned from Irving Plaza.
That's genius. That's genius.
But it was interesting because it goes back to the clip of I think it was Busta Rhymes on. I think it was on Drink Champs where he was talking about how Old Dirty Bastard was such a master of his craft, and like you can't make a crazy person seem intelligent. But you can take an intelligent person and make him seem crazy.
Sure.
So Old Dirty was always able to change in and out of his characters, and I remember 2015 because it was an event. There was a celebration of life for Old Dirty Bastard, and I remember I had met his son, Young Dirty Bastard, and
yes, I know his son.
And I said to him, I said, and having photographed your father, and then looking back at these images of your father, like he has 4 distinct characteristics about him, and his son had to think about it. He was like, yeah, because in my mind, I see Old Dirty Bastard, the 4 characters, kind of like how you'd see like the group Kiss, and you have the 4 different like makeup guys of Kiss.
Right.
In my mind, I see this like Old Dirty Bastard being like the group Kiss, having these 4 specific characteristics or whatever,
Makes sense.
So it was one thing I was able to share with the son, but getting back to like that, like being around Old Dirty Bastard, experiencing, him just being him, and then fast forward to 96, him being the new version of him, and then also being able to share with the family, the imagery and just talking about his father or their father. Like it's just an honor. Like that's one person that sticks out to me during the time. Like there's other people like Big Pun and Fat Joe and a lot of people I've been blessed to be around, and like thank God they're still alive as far as Joe and the Fugees or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was a time period I was very, looking back at it, very blessed to be a part of what it was. And when it wasn't fun anymore, like I just dropped the camera, dropped hip hop, and decided to started producing amateur skateboarding events and went into action sports marketing.
I mean, why not?
I mean, it's the suburbs. Like that was the other side of my life. You know what I mean?
You are blessed. And trust what I'm telling you. This was an amazing show, man. And thank you for your time today, brother.
It was an honor to be here.
There's no question. But so make sure you get this book. Buy, purchase, buy, purchase. This is what it's all about, man. Entrepreneurship. And Eric, thank you for being here, bro. I appreciate you, man. Yo, this is T Money, and you are now watching the T Money podcast. Go to YouTube and watch episode 39 with the great Eric Holman from Graffiti Rock. It is now posted. Check that out. And don't forget to check out my main man, 50 Grand, Understand, you know what I mean? Eric Monroe, rare and unseen moments of 90s hip-hop in the building, man. And he's more than just hip-hop, man. He's part of the culture. Understand that. Peace out, brother.
Peace. May the 4th be with you.
No question, brother. Thanks, man.
Shout out to TTK.
That's
made
right.
this.
T-Money in the building. Kiana, the Purple Goddess in the building. Peace to Sierra Ross. She'll be back soon. 2 fingers, peace, and 2 fingers. We out of here.
T-Money podcast joint.